Hi, welcome to the second part of my mini course that I call Inside a Nukhba's Terrorist Head, understanding everything about the Middle East, the conflict, and what led to October 7th. Um, Last time we kind of ended with the establishment of the State of Israel. I do want to go a little backwards today and rewind because we did go over like the 100 years leading to the state of Israel, but we did it from an Arab perspective, meaning we kind of cover the history of an Arab person. We spoke a little bit about Judah and Palestine, where that name came from. But now I want to go back again in time, and this time very quickly kind of go through those same benchmarks, that same timeline, but this time from a Zionist Jewish perspective and understand what were the Jewish Zionist events that led to the establishment of the State of Israel. And then we'll continue forward in time after 1948. So I want to share my presentation again. Okay. So this time we're, like I said, inside a Nukba's terrorist mind, part two. So again, let's go back in time. Remember the slide, we saw this last time. The Middle East under the Ottoman Empire is just this big, huge blurb of land that people can walk through it or move through it pretty freely. So let's talk about the Jews. First of all, I have to start with Jews have always lived in Israel, Palestine, Judah. So when we talk actually about this Ottoman Empire, we spoke about how each person, if you'd stop them on the street and ask them who are they, where are they from, they would answer according to their religion or geographic connection. You would have encountered Jews, all kinds of Jews, Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Jews that have moved from other parts of the Ottoman Empire, Jews that have lived for generations in Jerusalem and Sfat and Tiberias and Hebron. So yeah, they were tribes of Jews that lived there. If you go all the way back to Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, and Ha'ari, the Ha'ari HaKadosh that came to Tzfat. So throughout hundreds and thousands of years, there were always Jews who lived in this piece of land. But we want to talk about the massive movement of more and more Jews coming. And that's why we need to talk about the Zionist movement. So Jews in all over the world have, of course, been subject to anti-Semitism and pogroms and things like that. For many years, they weren't getting equal rights to other citizens of different countries. And then in 1791, the Emancipation came out giving a lot of the European Jews equal rights to any other citizen, theoretically. Um, so although they did get equal rights, and there were a lot of Jewish movements saying, "Great, now we're just any other citizen. We should just be," that's when kind of like this movement of getting further away from religion and just being a secular man of the world kind of community. We're scholars, we're scientists, we're doctors. Judaism doesn't define us. That was kind of the movement, alongside the fact that Jews literally got equal rights and it was easier to do. But it wasn't all pink and nice. So in 1881, there was the Kiev pogrom, a very big pogrom, and of course, other pogroms as well. A lot of Jews being killed, a lot of Jews being moved around. And in addition, in Romania, the Jewish emancipation wasn't really like it was there in paper, but they really weren't getting their rights, and they were being treated really badly by the Romanian government. And so this movement started. These are three of a few of the main people who kind of started the Zionist movement. They were kind of like the people who foresaw the Zionist movement. Moshe Leib Lilienbaum, of Shmuel Mohaliver, and Yehuda Pinkster. And they really pushed to take Zion. The word Zion is in all of our prayer books. Zion means Jerusalem. Zion means the country of Zion, of Jerusalem. So they started talking about, you know what, we thought that anti-Semitism would stop once we would get equal rights, or once we just became like anybody else, secular and knowledgeable and well educated. And that is not happening. Anti-Semitism is finding different ways to rise up again. It doesn't matter what the law says. And so they start talking about the idea of going to the land of Israel that's right now under the Ottoman Empire, going there and establishing Jewish communities. And so they start this movement called Chovevei Zion, Lovers of Zion, and that's in 1873. And basically the goals are to return the Jewish people to their land, to redeem land through purchase, to buy pieces of land and work, agricultural work, and plant things in those lands. Obviously get international recognition. So talk to different leaders, talk to the world greatest leaders to have that piece of land recognized as the Jewish people's land, and spreading this idea, the Zionist idea, and encouraging more and more Jews to immigrate from wherever they were living to that piece of land. And economic assistance. They knew that money drives everything. And that's where people like Baron Rothschild comes in, and a lot of other Jewish influencers and powerful people who basically give money to the Zionist movement and to the settlers who moved to Israel. And so that happens, and we have the first aliyah. It's known as the agriculture aliyah. Aliyah is moving up, but it's basically immigrating to Israel. And it was the first major wave of Jewish immigration into Ottoman Palestine, and this happens between 81 and 1903. And so they come here and they start basically working the land. They purchase with money, they purchase pieces of land, and they start the first Jewish settlements. Rishon LeZion, Rosh Pina, Zichron Yaakov, Gedera, Petach Tikva was already existing, but they kind of expanded it, and they start working the land. Another thing that happens, not so much after, in 1896, is the Dreyfus Affair. To those who don't remember the details, this is in France. Dreyfus is a not religious French citizen who happens to be Jewish, and he is a soldier, and it's a whole affair that he gets, something gets pinned on him, basically because of anti-Semitism or because of other things. But he does have a big trial. And in that trial, they find him guilty, even though he is innocent. And this is the famous j'accuse of Émile Zola, the French reporter who says, I accuse, what's happening here in France, that this trial is not, doing justice. But there's another journalist sitting there while this trial goes on, and this is Theodor Herzl, who's also a European journalist, and he sees this and he's a secular man, also a Jew, and something changes when he encounters this episode in France, and he realizes that anti-Semitism will always find a way, and it doesn't matter if you look religious and people mock the Jews for the way they eat and live and what they wear, or if they completely become part of that country and they are officers and they're leaders, and still there's kind of always something pinned on them. And so Herzl tries to figure out what to do with this problem that Jews are always a minority, they're always different, they're always, anywhere in the world, they're suffering. And basically, he writes a book. He publishes in 1896, The Juden State, the state of the Jews. And he actually puts it down on paper and says, we need to establish the Jewish state. A year later, in Basel, in Switzerland, they do the first Zionist Congress of all those people, all these different influencers and leaders that believe in this, that already started with that first Aliyah. And they all get together and they form the Basel program. That it's the first manifesto that actually says we want the first Jewish state to the new right to be established. And that leads to the second Aliyah. So the second Aliyah, after that, this movement, right? Every year they have this Congress, and more people join this idea of having an independent Jewish state. 1904 to 1914, more Jews, tens of thousands of Jews, come from Europe to Israel, to that, it's not Israel, it's this little piece of Palestine, right? This little strip inside the Ottoman Empire. And they purchase lands and they establish, and it's really, really hard, by the way. People keep going back to Europe. People die. There's malaria and there's swamps and there's different Arab tribes and locals, and it's not fun. Tel Aviv is also established in that second Aliyah. And then it all ends in 1914 because of World War II. In 1917, remember we said the British came. They're also working their way and reminding us of what we spoke about last time. They, kind of stir the pot and they're trying to take over the Ottoman Empire. But Balfour, it's a long story, but basically they're Jewish Zionist leaders who are influencers in the British Empire, and they get Balfour to declare that Israel, the Jewish people, deserve to have a state in Palestine. And that is a very, very big deal. So that's that. And then in 1920, Britain gets the mandatory Palestine, or officially it becomes the British Empire, the British Mandate. That's kind of what we saw last time. There's passports. They divide the whole land. We spoke about all of that last time, but this is kind of to align those timelines. So the British recognize that this piece of land is going to belong to the Jews and be a Jewish state. And then they get their mandate and issue these passports, Palestinian passports. We spoke about the name Palestine, created by the Roman Empire and carried on by the British when they came. Before that, nobody called it Palestine. Okay, and then this is back to where we ended last time, November 29th, 1947, the United Nations vote, yes, no, and the majority votes yes to this partition plan. So the Jews will get a state. Again, Arab and Jews are both citizens in that state. And then the Arabs get a state that will be called Palestine, I guess. I don't know. And this is where we ended last time. The Jews are happy. They go to the streets. They start dancing. The Arab nations around Palestine take out their weapons and attack this new people, it's before the state was established, but they take out their guns. And so the last day of the mandate is May 8th, and David Ben-Gurion even though people, United States and other allies told him to wait, he does not wait. He wants to seize the opportunity. And on the very last day that the British mandate is still effective, he declares the independence of the state of Israel. And like we saw, the Arab states around react in just invading this newly established state. And like we said, in this miraculous, I don't know, turn of events, the Jewish people actually are able to push back. And when there is a ceasefire, this is how the border looks. So I'm just reminding us this whole West Bank is part of Jordan when they do the ceasefire, including half of Jerusalem. So the old city where the Kotel and where the Dome of the Rock, all of that is under Jordanian territory, and then the rest, the west of Jerusalem, is under Israel, and then Gaza is part of Egypt. And that is 1949. Now let's talk about what happened in 1949, and let's try and zoom through the history of the state of Israel. There's a lot packed into it. I can't go into all of it, but I tried kind of pinpointing the main important benchmarks to understand what we're talking about. So 1949. So what happens is that Israel, even after that war, reaches out an olive branch and says to all the neighboring states, we do not want war. We just want peace. And so when they finish this war, they actually, this is what we spoke about, they actually agree upon this line where Gaza is part of Egypt. Okay, so this is important. Gaza was never under Israeli territory in 1948. Let's go through the timeline really quickly. In May of that year, 1949, Israel is admitted to the UN. It is accepted by the whole United Nations, the whole Europe, Western world as part of the nations. In December of that year, Ben Gurion proclaims Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Again, this is just half of Jerusalem because half of it is under Jordanian territory. In 1950, the Knesset, Israel's legislators, passed the law of return. This is important because they basically say that this land of Israel that was established after the Holocaust will always be open to every single Jew in the world. So there is no such thing will happen again where some Jews are prosecuted or killed because they are Jews and they won't have anywhere to go. The Jewish state will always be a home for anyone who is Jewish. Really quickly, just to put us on the timeline, in July of 1956, we have the Suez Crisis, where Egypt starts, kind of blocking the Suez Canal. Britain gets involved. There's a whole mess there. Let's talk about the Palestinians for a minute. We said that their identity was kind of united under this Palestinian passport, right? Of this like connection of border, like inside this border that the British Empire kind of marked on the paper, and now they are kind of mad at the Jewish people who are prospering in their tiny little new country. And so in 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization is founded, and its like purpose is to establish an Arab state over the entire territory of the Mandatory Palestine. So Mandatory Palestine, again, it's the term that we use to talk about British Palestine, right? The British mandate, that's what we're talking about. So they say the whole area that was the British mandate, that whole piece of land is going to be the Arab state. And we are advocating to eliminate the state of Israel. So that was why they were founded. This is before 67, by the way. It's 1964. Um, by the way, forgot to say, and we'll talk about more maybe in that third part of this, but remember Sheikh Yassin, one who met with Hitler, the one who kind of killed the other Arab family and united everybody under this idea of um, driving the European conquerors, which is British, and the Jewish people out of here and establishing this big Arab state. That idea is what then evolves into the PLO. And later, Arafat will talk about him, and others are basically the predecessors of this. Okay, let's jump forward. 1967. 1967 is a crazy, crazy 6 day war. It starts with the Arab nations around Israel again colluding, meeting together, and saying, we're kind of sick of this 19-year-old state of Israel. We don't want them here. We want to throw them all into the ocean. And they prepare their armies to invade Israel from all the borders of Israel. It was pretty scary in Israel at that time. The people made dark jokes, of course, that the last one will turn the light off in Ben Gurion. Really, it was kind of the scary doomsday atmosphere because they were openly talking. All the five armies around were talking openly about just invading at once and doing everything they can to push all the Jews into the ocean. What happened was that Israel Strike First, she kind of blew up a lot of their airplanes and air force, and in only 6 days of war was able to push back all of the armies. And then if you look, all that green space is new areas that Israel conquered in that 1967 war. So instead of ceasing to exist like the Arab nations promised, she actually, this nation, the state of Israel, expanded. So the biggest part is actually towards Egypt. So this whole Sinai Peninsula was not part of Israel, and this became part of Israel. Israel conquered this whole part back from Jordan, including the liberation of the Kotel and Eastern Jerusalem, and then up north, the Golan Heights from Syria. So now Israel is more than 2 times bigger. And what does Israel do with this new amazing piece of land, bigger land that she has? Nothing. The next day, the state of Israel says that she wants peace. And she reaches out after the ceasefire and says to all the nations around, we are willing to give every piece of land back. We will give this whole peninsula back to Egypt. We'll give this whole piece back to Jordan. We'll give this back to Syria. Just if you negotiate peace with us, we are willing to give those pieces of land back. Just, declare peace with us and let's move forward. The Arab response is no, no, no. And this is known as the 3 no's of Khartoum. All the Arab leaders meet in Khartoum and they declare there will be no peace, no recognition, and no negotiation with Israel. And basically they say, no, don't give us that land back because we will not agree to have peace with you. We won't allow a Jewish state here. So, yep, that's what happened. So before the Yom Kippur War, let's just say, we'll go back to see this. Basically, Israel, okay, everybody said no to her. So now there's a big inside debate of what to do with these areas. In the meantime, while the Arab nations said no to peace. So while, what happens is after a few years, while this piece of territory, these pieces of territory are under Israeli rule, we have a little settlement here towards the Sinai Peninsula. We have new little settlements happening around the historical pieces of the land of Israel, right? So religious Jews are happy to go back to Hebron and Shechem and but Hebron and East Jerusalem and Judah and Samaria and all that. Um, and and obviously the Golan Heights. Yes, there are Palestinians in those pieces of land, right? So the Gaza Strip and Judah and Samaria has refugee camps. That once Israel reoccupied these pieces of land or regained them, she gained them with a lot of Palestinians that were pretty upset that now Israel was kind of dominating them, and probably rightly so. But we got we'll talk about it more, right? But basically, Israel got into this um, catch, right, where the military is there, and we do more and more settlers go there. There are Palestinians, and they're not happy, and then they start attacking, and then it's kind of a cycle, and we can talk about it more later. But this is what happens after 67: is that Israel does slowly start to establish settlements in that area. Okay, fast forward to 1973. Um, the big October 6th Yom Kippur War, the howliest day for the Jewish people, a big attack, a big surprise attack. Could Israel have known? Could they have not? There's a lot of inside Israel, right? Go see the movie Golda. I think it shows the situation pretty well and what happened during that war. But in the height of Yom Kippur, the from Syria and Jordan and Egypt, they all invade Israel at once. It's a very, very bloody war for both sides. Israel lost thousands of soldiers, and of course taken captive. But after all said and done, and again, go see Golda. At the end, Israel is able to come out victorious, and they actually not only maintain that whole area that they already got in 67, but they even get a little bit more. Like the green area is where Israel actually is able to conquer a little bit more pieces of land. The red is Egypt conquering back a little bit. So this is the outcome of the Yom Kippur War. In the meantime, this Palestinian right organization keeps trying to fight Israel and hurt Israel in many ways. I'm just showing two examples, famous examples. One was in 1974, Ma'alot massacre. Ma'alot is up north. Terrorists took over a school with 300 students who were sleeping there in a sleepover, and they were holding them hostages. The IDF tried rescuing them. Eventually, there were about 30 people killed. And then, of course, the Entebbe raid, which astonished the whole world. Um, a plane leaving Tel Aviv got hijacked, taken all the way to Entebbe in Africa, and then the IDF launched this crazy operation where they flew to Entebbe and rescued all of the people kidnapped, except a couple who were killed in the process, including Yoni Netanyahu, who's Bibi's brother, who was commanding this operation. But I'm just bringing those two examples to say that if I had to go through every single incident, we would be doing this for hours, because it was just constant terrorist attack and killing of families in their homes up north, little kids, a family that was killed in their home with babies, buses. Like there's a lot that was done throughout the years to try and hurt the state of Israel. And now we're moving forward into happier matters. 1978, not so long after that war, Camp David Accords, and Egypt and Israel, this is Begin and Sadat, they are um, signing a peace treaty. And Egypt and Israel are officially at peace. I say officially because it's with all the peace agreements, there's kind of a gap between what the government decides to do for her various reasons, including American and European influences and you know um, different different goals for the country. Let's put it that way, and interests, and what the people in the streets feel. I think Egypt is one of those examples where what the government did was one thing, but what the people felt in the streets were probably different. But yes, Egypt and Israel are at peace. And remember, I told you that Israel kind of had this little settlement. It was called Yamit in the Sinai Peninsula. And Israel evacuates the people from there and says, we're giving this whole peninsula back to Egypt. So now this whole yellow area is Egypt, and there's a border again with Israel and Egypt and peace. 1982, Lebanon War up in the north. Again, this was very familiar to what we hear today after a lot of rockets that were launched at Israel and northern settlements and northern cities of Israel from Lebanon. Hezbollah is part of that Palestinian groups that fight to remove Israel, and they keep launching rockets northern border, and eventually Israel attacks back, and that escalates into the Lebanon War, which kind of drags on because Israel kind of stays inside Lebanon for a few years later, and then the first Intifada breaks. Again, we can talk hours and hours about the situation of Palestinian Arabs in those refugee camps, in the settlements, like in the West Bank, and what it is like. And obviously, it's a cycle, and it kind of, kids grow up looking at these soldiers as their enemies, and it's a circle of violence. This Intifada apparently started because there was a Jew that was killed in Gaza, because then Jews could go in freely into Gaza. And the next day or a few days later, a military vehicle hit a few Palestinians in the West Bank, and all hell came loose. And for these years, there's a lot of riots and a lot of resistance and fighting. And then hope for peace. Um, this is so complicated to talk about, but I will try and shorten it. The first Oslo Accords are signed in 1993. Basically, they say that there's going to be a mutual recognition, meaning the PLO that up until now said Israel needs to cease to exist, they recognize Israel. They ask for the creation of a Palestinian Authority, so that they will get a government, they will get weapons, they will get officers and policemen. Israel needs to withdraw from parts of Gaza and the West Bank, and they will divide everything in the West Bank to different areas. There will be A, B, and C, basically places that are only controlled by Arabs, places that are controlled by the military, and places that are controlled by Israel. And there'll be economic cooperation, and we'll continue talking about all the other things like refugees and borders and Jerusalem. And that is signed. Now, that's very festive on the one hand. On the other hand, we're looking at this person, Arafat, and I will talk about it more in the third piece of this. But a lot of people had doubts about this Oslo Accord, because Arafat was I think he was even related to Sheikh Yassin, the one that met with Hitler. He for many years was the one that led um, the same kind of worldview, that same leadership that says we need to fight these conquerors. The Jews are conquerors. They're not supposed to be here. We want a big Arab state. And again, in the third part, I will talk more about Arafat and I will talk about more about the Islam part of it, and the religious part of this and how other parts like Iran and ISIS are connected. But for many reasons that I won't go into right now, Arafat was not trusted by a lot of people. And they felt that Israel was walking into a trap and that giving the Palestinians more power and weapons will backfire, literally. And so that happened. Following that, Israel and Jordan um, also had a peace treaty in 1994, and the treaty clarifies the borders of the two countries and their water rights. Up to this day, Israel and Jordan kind of maintain relationship through water, and they each pledged that neither would allow a third country to use its territory to stage an attack on the other. It's very interesting, by the way, because not long ago when Iran launched rockets at Israel, some of those rockets were disarmed or hit under Jordan. So Jordan and Israel basically are at this kind of cold peace since then. So really a time where a lot of optimistic, um, more left-wing people are in this euphoria or hope that things are going to turn for the better and change. It's important again to say that I think the Jews and the Israelis came with that mindset of the West. We don't want any more war in the world. We want peace. We want prosperity. We want to move forward and be an innovative space. And a lot believe that this is what now the Palestinians woke up one day and want as well. And so there was a lot of hope in the air. And then 1995, Yitzhak Rabin, the prime minister, is assassinated, which shocks Israel, tears up society from inside. It was done by an extreme right-wing Jew. And basically, Israel's society is ripped apart to right and left. And that's a lot of the inner tension that has to do with that. Let's move forward to 2000. In May of 2000, Israel withdraws the last of its forces from southern Lebanon. Remember, we stayed in Lebanon from the 1982 war. That was part of the agreement. In October, there are Arab citizen riots in northern Israel. And the 7th of October, 2000, Hezbollah raids Israel and they abduct 3 Israeli soldiers. They basically cross the border, the international border, and they hijack 3 Israeli soldiers. And then the second Intifada, which I remember it myself. I lived through it as a teenager, and it was horrific. Just in those pictures here, you can see Sbarro, the restaurant that blew up. You can see a bus that blew up. It was constant terror every single day. Buses exploding, restaurants shooting. You really didn't know if you would make it to the end of the day and if you will see your loved ones again. And thousands of Israeli citizens lost their lives. And obviously, this was kind of a cycle with the IDF going into those camps in the West Bank and trying to find those terrorists. And obviously, they always hide within citizens. And so it was, again, this cycle of a lot of blood. Now, I put this middle picture here because this is a very important picture. This picture shows a lynch that was done in 2 IDF reserve men who accidentally drove into Ramallah and were and again, remember, there is, remember Oslo, like there's a Palestinian police, there's Palestinian government. So theoretically, there should be people who can help these soldiers from Israel find their way out, to protect them, to uh, get them back to safety. And instead, they are taken into the police station. This window shows the police station, the same police that Israel helped establish and gave them guns and gave them uniforms. Um, they take them into that police station and they lynch them terribly, tear them apart. And this guy who goes to the window with his hands all covered with blood, showing them to the masses who cheer. That was a disgusting picture. That was kind of a symbol in that intifada. And the reason that I brought it here is just because now, after October 7th, I've seen a lot of people around the world on TikTok and social media use this symbol of a bloodied hand to say, "Hey, we're with Palestine. We're like for resistance." Yes, I don't know if they know where it came from, but this is where it came from. When you say, "Hey, I'm supporting Hamas or supporting the Palestinian resistance," and what it means, this is what it means. Babies and children and women and innocent people were killed almost daily. Let's move up. 2005, another personal connection. So let me back up a little bit. After 1967, when the Arab nations said no to peace and Israel was left with all those pieces of land, actually, Ariel Sharon was the one who kind of thought of this plan, and they sent settlers to kind of create agricultural moshavim and kibbutzim here in this strip of land. So this is Gaza right here, up in the northern area of the Gaza Strip, and there's little villages, Khan Yunis and Rafia and Rafah and all that. And that blue area, they were like 20 something settlements. This is one of them. My husband was born and raised in one of them. It was not extreme people, just agriculture, like farmers that were sent there. They found a way to grow things on sea beach, on sea on beach sand, sorry. And they actually deported out like vegetables and flowers and different things to Europe. It was very successful, and it was like heaven on earth, really. And then in 2004, Ariel Sharon says, one-sided, and there's different reasons that we can get into of why that happened, but Ariel Sharon says, enough, we have soldiers there, they keep, there's rockets, there's bombs, we're taking a step back, we don't want Gaza. Egypt doesn't want Gaza, by the way. Egypt did not want it. As part of the peace agreement, Egypt said no to Gaza. Remember that line, that border we did? It did not involve Gaza. Egypt did not want that piece of land, and Israel kind of was left with it. And Ariel Sharon says, I will take a step back, I will put a wall. And this wasn't with any kind of peace communication, right, with the Palestinians. This was just like, I'm taking a step back. There's too many Palestinians there. I'm going to disengage and take all these Jewish settlements with us. They were there for 30 years, by the way. This is after 30 years of living there. We are going to ruin it, to destroy everything, take those Jews out of there, our citizens out of there, and just, put a wall, and the Palestinians can decide what to do with it. And so obviously it was very controversial, and there was a lot of resistance. This is a picture of my friends. The soldiers, the IDF, actually went in, pulled everybody out, completely destroyed all the houses, and just left it there for the Palestinians. Now, there could have been a lot of scenarios after that. Some argued that this is an opportunity for the Palestinians, that they can create this little Singapore of the Middle East in that strip of land. They have a border with Egypt, they have a border with Israel. The border with Israel, by the way, was not sealed shut, like a lot of people want to think. Um, Gaza still got electricity from Israel, still got water from Israel, and there was uh, like a post where uh, workers who got papers could move from Gaza into Israel and work, and goods could come in. So it wasn't like sealed off. It was just, this is a new border. This is not Israel anymore. Um, and a lot of the infrastructure that the Israelis created there was left there, and theoretically, they could have used it. What happened was, with US pressure and influence, in 2006, there was an election. Hamas, the extreme terrorist group, took over, won the election, or did they? I don't know. They won the election, and they formed a government with Fatah. Fatah is more kind of the left wing side. This is more Arafat, where Arafat went. So if we talk about Fatah, and we'll talk about it more in the third part, Fatah was like the group that talked to Israel, that did the Oslo Accords, that felt that there was a reason to negotiate with Israel for reasons, and it doesn't matter what the end game is. Again, we'll talk about it in the last piece. And Hamas was the more right wing extreme of like, we are not talking to Israel. So Hamas won the election, and there was like this government, right, that was made of the Hamas party and the Fatah party. But in 2007, Hamas took over, literally, because one day they just took all the Fatah people and literally threw them off the roofs and executed all of them. And the next day, they wore the same uniforms that the Fatah used as the policemen and as, the officials, and they just became a dictatorship that ruled Gaza since 2007. So this is very important to understand. I want to go very quickly through everything that happened from 2005 to recent events. So 2006, Gilad Shalit, a soldier, is abducted into Gaza from that border with Gaza. Also, Hezbollah up north, they cross into Israel and they ambush two IDF vehicles. They kill three soldiers, and they take two others into Lebanon. Later, no, they were killed as well, but their bodies were taken hostages. And then that kind of starts the second Lebanon war, the 2006 Lebanon war. And again, it was after a lot of attacks of Hezbollah all over northern Israel. 2008, back to Gaza, the first Gaza war. By the way, Ariel Sharon, when he said we're going to disengage and it's going to be one-sided, he kind of promised that, like, the first missile that, people said, well, they're going to send missiles all over Israel. And he said, no, the first missiles that they will send, we will go in, we'll deal with it. I don't know if he meant it or not, because he kind of passed away a year later. But Israel did get a lot of rockets from 2005 to 2008, both from Gaza, who used those same places that Israel used to live in. They used that as places to launch the rockets from, and they used the supplies that they got into Gaza to create missiles and to dig tunnels. And with that one tunnel, they captured Gilad Shalit. And then in 2008, there was a war, and that went on for a few months. And then in 2010, the famous Gaza flotilla raid. Now, I did put it here because I think it's important for the context. From Turkey came these like few ships that were saying, oh, Israel, is putting Gaza under, it's like an open air prison and all those things. And we are going to come through the see and liberate Gaza and prove our point. Israel kept saying that there is, again, two borders for Gaza, one to Egypt. So why doesn't the world say anything to Egypt? Because Egypt would literally shoot anyone trying to cross that border. So Egypt was not opening anything to Palestinians, and Israel was opening. There was a breathing border because again, Ghazians could go out and work in Israel and make money, and trucks of food and goods and supplies and electricity and water kept coming from Israel into Gaza. So we disengaged, but really Israel was still responsible for that part. But anyway, the Free Gaza movement and human rights. I'm doing this because they had a lot of weapons on them. Came with a flotilla towards Gaza, and IDF tried stopping it. It didn't go well, and there was a lot of heat around that. 2011, Gilad Shalit, after 5 years in captivity, there's a prisoner exchange. This is also very important to when we want to talk about October 7th. It was very controversial, this prisoner exchange, because Israel basically said yes to giving 1,000 prisoners, and I'm talking terrorists, for one live soldier. Um, Jews have always valued life and valued saving a life more than anything. But people were very, very nervous about this exchange. They thought it was too high a price. And the Prime Minister Bibi did sign this agreement, and Gilad Shalit was brought home, which was very it was a happy moment for Israel and his family, but also Israel let go of 1,000 prisoners. A lot of them, like dozens of them, later went and killed Jews. We know who they are. And they killed a whole family in their home with knives, parents and their 5 kids, and they took out a lot of terror attacks. And I need to mention this: one of the people that was sent free in exchange for Gilad Shalit was Yahya Sinwar, who we will talk about him, but he kind of orchestrated October 7th. Okay, 2012, another operation in Gaza in response to ongoing rocket fire. And then 2014, another Gaza conflict. So you see that starting in 2005, and then every few years, this conflict with Gaza keeps going. And I have to again mention this whole time, Hamas is ruling the Gaza Strip. This whole time, there's Qatari money that is being transferred, or maybe later on, and we'll talk about it. But since 2014, there's money transferred into Gaza. And again, more and more aid that supplies, cement, food, all of that probably didn't reach the citizens, and is used to create more bombs, more tunnels, and more rockets. Okay, let's move forward. We're almost done with this part. 2020, the Abraham Accords. This is really important, and I'll touch it again in our last part, because some Arab countries have had enough. So now we're at peace with Jordan, we're at peace with Egypt, whatever that peace, right, may be, but for many years. And then the Emirates, and Bahrain and other Arab countries that are further out want to have an accord with Israel and start actually, and I'll call them the non-extreme Arab countries that want to talk about how to advance the Middle East and how to move forward. I will talk about it in length in the last part because it all is connected. The Abraham Accords, Iran, Russia, Hamas, Islamic extremists are all connected to what happened on October 7th, but this is a big part of it, and I'm just mentioning it now in this timeline. We will go back to it. And the last thing that happened that I want to mention is 2021. Jerusalem Day is a national holiday that mentions that day in the 67 war where Jerusalem was unified. And Hamas starts launching rockets, and they launch rockets at Jerusalem, which is an escalation. And they not only launch rockets, but they call all the Arabs all over Israel, including Israeli citizen Arabs, to resist. And this is a religious call. And so this is actually a segue to our third part that talks about the religious aspect. But I want to mention it here, kind of a sneak peek to the third part. They call everybody, they call the Muslims to fight Israel, retaliate, and all over Israel, especially in the mixed cities. And I'm talking Akko and Yaffo and Lod in Jerusalem, riots explode. And this is between Israeli Arabs and Jews. And there's a lot of violence. And so this is an important context as well, because this is the first time that Muslim Arabs that are citizens of Israel took part and listened to what Hamas said when they said, "Oh, Israel, the Israel government is overtaking our holy, Dome of the Rock, holy Jerusalem. Fight for Jerusalem." And with that fight for Jerusalem call, I will end this second part, and next time we will talk about this exactly. We will talk about, I want to end with what we said, right? What is going on in that Nukhba terrorist mind? So all this context, all this oppression, right? All this like cycle of violence, and the fact that that person in Gaza is probably born into the situation where they live in poverty and they live in the cycle of violence and they live under Hamas, and what it means and what happened in the previous 100 years and the Zionist movement, all that. And the last piece is the religious piece, which I want to talk about in the third part. So thank you again for taking the time to listen. Like last time, please let me know if you have questions, clarification, feedback, so that I can incorporate it into the next part. Yeah, thank you. Share this link. Let me know what you think. And I will send the last part soon.